Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Our Golden 20s. My name is Sadie, and I'm joined by my co-host, Tegan.
Hey.
And we are, again, recording in person tonight, which is super fun, or today, super fun and exciting. But we are here to chat all about work again today, and more specifically, talking about the 9-to-5 versus freelancing, side hustles, owning your own business, whatever, that looks like to you or resonates with you. We're just probably going to call it freelancing just to keep it general. But that is what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, I feel like this is one of the rare topics where we both are well versed in it. We have a lot of knowledge and we're ready to drop that knowledge.
So all the past episodes you've heard, we weren't actually qualified to talk about them. But this one we are.
Yeah. Well, there are some where it's like,
we don't have much experience.
Or it's like we only know what our limited experience is.
Yeah, exactly.
But we've both been working a while. Yeah,
very true. And you guys seem to like the work episodes, so we're just trying to find ways to keep these fun and exciting because we love talking about it. You guys like listening to it, so let's take a different spin by throwing in the freelance stuff. But I feel like this is such a, I don't know, maybe a hot topic lately, and I'll tell you why. I feel like we've kind of gone through, especially as millennials, the past few years, there's been this huge desire to become your own boss, to be a freelancer, to own your own business. And it was just everybody was that is the dream. And we're anti-corporate. Nobody wants to work a 9-to-5 job for the next 25, 30 years and stay at the same company. I don't know. Maybe that's just me and the people I was surrounded by, but that seemed to be kind of the millennial dream. And I think especially in the times of social media, and social media is just also kind of been coming around with millennials and stuff, but I feel it's become so easy to see a side of owning your own business. If it's an influencer, if it's some sort of digital nomad working on a beach in Bali, it's so easy to look at them and be that's the life I aspire to have. They're so free, they have so much flexibility, and here I am in my 9-to-5 job, and this is the worst when I could be doing work a totally different way. So I feel that's kind of been where people's mindsets have been, or their views. But now I feel at least I've been seeing on TikTok how people are starting to now romanticize the 9-to-5 again. And I feel people are starting to experience working for themselves and experience owning their own business. And they're oh God, this is actually a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. I'm not sitting on a beach in Bali, just enjoying it, working leisurely. I'm busting my ass all the time. And it's in sometimes more work than just working a 9-to-5 job. So I don't know. I feel there's pros and cons of both, and we're definitely going to go through them today, but that's just kind of where my head went. And for me personally, where I'm it's been the dream for both of those, and we can definitely get into that. But I was definitely that person that was it is my dream to have my own business.
Yeah.
And then, I got some experience freelancing stuff, and now I'm is it the dream?
Yeah.
Or am I okay with the 9-to-5?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I feel it's the kind of thing that is so heavily romanticized, and there's such a weight that comes with being I'm an entrepreneur. I am my own boss. I run my own business. And then it's when you look at it, there's not that much different. Is that more noble than someone who puts their head down and works 9-to-5?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Everyone's just working to get their shit done, you know?
Exactly. And we're all just wanting to get paid at the end of the day.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. So maybe let's go through some of the pros and cons. I feel we can maybe start with, we might be bouncing around a little bit all over, but if we kind of start with working for a company, maybe some pros and cons there. I think it's also worth noting, I've always worked very client side and for retailers in head offices, and actually only retailers. So even my experience there is quite limited, offering a product and service from a company, where Tegan's worked a lot, maybe exclusively in agency life.
Yeah.
So even our corporate experiences are different from one another, but I feel that helps us bring so many different perspectives to this.
Yeah. Well, and it's worth saying too, like, obviously this doesn't apply to every single business. Like the first agency I was in was you were on call 24/7.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's very much like if you're just freelance or you're running your own business. But so this is more in general and definitely more on maybe like a corporate side where you'd have HR or, you know, laws that prevent you from working that way.
All you need is an HR department, let's be honest.
Yeah. And so I do think like the main thing with working a 9 to 5 that is a pro is that it is truly a 9 to 5. Like most times, you know, sometimes something comes up, you have to work late, whatever. But it's not like, say when you're in university, there's always something for you to be doing. You never like can take a weekend and just relax because you're always thinking, well, I've got that assignment due. Yeah. It's very much the same when you run your own business. You always have things you could be doing. Yeah. Whereas when you're working for a company, when you're clocked out, you can truly be clocked out. Yeah. And it's a lot easier to set boundaries. If you're just working for yourself, it's totally up to you how much you work, but it's like, it's your money. Yeah. The stakes are fully on you.
Yeah. And I think that's also why people have a hard time setting boundaries when they work for themselves, because at least in like my experience freelancing, it was hard to say no because I was like, well, look at how much money I could be making if I just did everything, you know? Yeah. Where 9 to 5, it's like, regardless how much I work, if I work from 8 to 8 or if I work 9 to 5, I'm making the same amount every 2 weeks. Yeah. And like, of course, there's going to be times, like you said, where a project's going on longer and you have to like work outside those hours or whatever. And it also depends on that company culture. Like maybe your boss does expect you to check emails in the evenings, whatever. However, I work in social media, which never sleeps, as we all know. And I hardly ever work outside like my hours, and that's maybe rare for like this specific role I'm in, but it's just like maybe working after hours is like posting a post, but it's not like I'm responding to emails. I'm like working on things like you said, it's just so much easier to like truly end at 5 and also to mentally check out. Like it's not, at the end of the day, it's not, your company's problems are not your problems. Yeah. So you can just be like, all right, close computer. Now let's go on to like my social life in the evening and like actually check out. So those boundaries are key. Also taking vacation. Yeah. Like
so much better.
So much easier to like actually clock out and like take that time for yourself.
Yeah. Especially like, obviously if you own a business where you have enough employees that you truly can take a vacation, this doesn't apply to you. But like when I'm freelancing, it's just me by myself. And if I'm on vacation, I need to be able to check my emails because if I miss an email from a potential client, that's a big chunk of money. And now obviously I can say I'm on vacation. I can start that project when I get back, but I have to be able to respond. Then it's like, so that means I can't go to Cuba, say, where you can't get internet access on vacation, period. Yeah. Because I need to be reachable by email. Whereas when you're just, I don't want to say a cog in the machine, but it's not your circus, not your really monkeys. Like you can do whatever you want and truly like turn off your phone. Like when I go on vacation, I shut off my email, which you can't do when it's just you.
Business. Yeah. And it's also easier, like you get paid for vacation time when you're employed by a company. Like I think at least here in Canada, I feel most companies do 3 weeks paid holidays now. It used to be 2 weeks, but I feel that's gone up to 3 for a lot of companies. And like as a self-employed person, it can be really hard to justify taking time off if that's like time away from a project and essentially like time away from making money or something like that. Yeah. So huge thing. And we know how important taking time off is, like to mentally recharge and not burn yourself out.
Yeah. The other thing is the same way that a company is paying you to take vacation, they are also taking care of your benefits, your insurance, your taxes. And these are all things just like how if you are freelance, you want to take a vacation, you have to put the money aside to pay yourself while you're on vacation. You have to put the money aside to pay your taxes. You have to put the money aside to go to the dentist if you have a cavity. And that's really hard for a lot of people.
Totally. Especially like me, who you guys know my story with money already, like where if I have money, I spend it, and I'll spend it on like less important things. So something that it's like I get a whole freelance deposit in my bank account, like for a project or whatever. It's hard for me to not view it as just like, oh, look at how much money I made.
A pure chunk of change.
Yeah. It's like, no, like X amount needs to go into savings for tax season.
Yes.
X amount needs to go like towards like a benefit plan or like health benefits, that sort of thing. It's hard to do that on your own versus your company just automatically calculates that. Like obviously when you're employed by a company, like it's being docked off your paycheck for like your benefits and taxes and all that stuff. Like it's not that you're not paying it. It's just
it's never in your bank account.
Done. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that's a big difference. Like I remember the first year where I did a full year of like solely freelance, my taxes, now we're in Canada, so obviously this is going to be different for everyone, but it was something like I had to pay $5,000 in taxes. And so it's like, if you're not the kind of person who can have $5,000 sitting in your bank account without spending it, like I literally would have been screwed.
Yeah.
Like I just would have not paid my taxes and then hope I didn't get arrested. Like it's like, that's crazy. And so you can see how people get into situations where you don't realize how much money you have to pay at the end of the year. And then you get stuck like having to get a loan and then paying the interest. You know what I mean? Like you have to be on top of it.
Yeah. I feel like going back to like influencers as like small business owners and like entrepreneurs, like I always think that when they're like, how to have a 6-figure month and how I had a 6-figure month. I'm like, okay, but what you're not saying is like how much of that was actually like money in the bank versus like what you're going to have to pay on taxes. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's just like
what you're putting towards health insurance and you know,
it's just like, of course it's great to make a lot of money, but that means you also have to pay more and stuff and you need to account for that. So
be organized.
Yeah.
Like you have to be so organized. Like a lot of people talk about how they have a special account in their bank account that when they get paid freelancing, they calculate what their taxes are and put them in there.
Exactly.
But it's like, if you're just working for someone else, you don't have to do any of that.
Nope.
It's already done.
Love it. So good.
Yeah. Another great part, probably one of my favorite parts of working for someone else, working a 9-to-5, is that oftentimes you don't have to directly deal with clients. Now, obviously, you won't relate to this, Sadie, because you are the clients.
Yeah. I have my own spin, but I'm going to let you keep going.
Or like, obviously, lots of people have to deal with clients. I email clients every day, but you have other people there to back you up.
Yeah. You usually have like an account manager of some sort.
And there's one of my favorite shows, Mad Men. I've talked about this before.
It's been a while though. I feel we're due for a Mad Men quote.
It's literally my favorite TV show of all time, period. But it's about advertising, which is too real for me, why I love it. But there's a quote that one of the characters says, which is, "My father used to say this is the greatest job in the world, except for one thing, the clients." And
it's true.
Yeah. Because when you're just doing your work and hanging out, you're having a great time. Yeah. And then they come in and ruin everything.
Yeah. And I feel like my side or my take on the client side is, in my experience, it's good because if you're all working on the same team or you're all on the same team, you're all working towards a common mission, a common vision, a common goal. And like, yes, you're the client, you know, but that's what brings you together versus in my freelance experience, I feel like I'm hired because I'm an expert in a certain like task if it's social media, whatever, but it's still very much like, well, it's the client's business. So even though you're hired to be the expert, it's still my business and we're going to do what I want at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Where like being client side or being corporate, you don't really have that.
Yeah.
Like it's a different kind of dynamic. And I feel it makes things a lot easier when you're all just like, yep, this is what we're all working together, towards together.
Yeah, it's a team. And so even like mistakes you make aren't the end of the world because you probably have other eyes on whatever you're working on. You have other people to back you up and support you. If it's you by yourself, if a mistake happens, it is solely your fault.
Yeah. And if you have clients, like,
yeah. It's intense.
Yeah, it is intense. And I think actually kind of going on about like how it's either you or like a team of people. This is something else that I really actually like about working for a company is you get to just do what you're good at, what you enjoy, hopefully. Like you're just hired to do the one role.
Yeah.
And anything outside of your expertise or like outside of that role, there's a whole other person, in some cases, a whole other team that deals with it. So in my example, like I said, I'm in social media. So when I log into work, all I need to worry about is social media. But when I'm freelancing doing social media, it's like 50% of my time is actually doing social media. The other 25 is like the paperwork, the billing, invoices, contracts. The other 50 is finding clients. Like that's a big piece. Like you're not spending all of your time doing what you're actually like good at or like what you are an expert in. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, you're not just whatever your service is. You're also an accountant. And you're in advertising and you're your own HR department and like you're your own account person. Like, it's a lot.
It is a lot.
Another nice thing about working for a company, working corporate, is that they are paying for your supplies if they're a good company. I've heard of some companies that don't do this, but I will say 99% of companies, if you have to work on a laptop, they will supply you with a laptop. A lot of places supply you with a workspace if you're not work from home. Places will give you lunch or drinks, all of these things as part of your salary. Whereas,
might be the shittiest coffee in the world, but it's free.
Yeah, exactly. I would drink like 5 cups of coffee when I would go into the office.
Yeah.
But it's like if you're working for yourself, you were paying those things.
Yeah.
Like I remember when I moved to the city, I didn't have a full-time job and I had to buy a laptop because like I had to as a freelancer. So it's like before you've made any money, you have to, I don't know how much my laptop cost back in the day when I bought it, but like $2,000, say, right off the top, you have to spend in hopes to make that money back.
Yeah. And I think like, obviously you can write things off as like a freelancer and stuff, but it's not to the same extent. And it, like you said, it's having that money up front. Like earlier this week, my work laptop completely stopped working. And within like 2 days, it was kind of a whole thing, but within 2 days, it was the longest 2 days of my life, but not that long. I had a new computer. I didn't have to pay anything. You know, I didn't have to front any money. Like my work just took care of it, got me a new computer. It was fine. And also think of the programs you work on in a day to day. Like if you're a video editor tag, like, you know, I don't even know, Final Cut, whatever you use to like
Adobe,
edit, those things are very expensive. Graphic designers, like, anything Adobe, anything, I can't even think, even like social media, like scheduling tools and whatever. Like
or Zoom.
Exactly.
Zoom.
Like these are all things that, yes, you can write off as a freelancer, but it is costs that you need to front, like upfront.
Yes.
You need to pay for upfront.
Yeah. Don't pull a David from Schitt's Creek and buy a bunch of stuff because you think it's a write-off.
What is that? Is that a new lamp?
Yeah. I'm thinking of bringing homeware into the store, so that's a write-off.
That's a write-off?
Yeah.
Do you even know what a write-off is?
Yeah. It's when you buy something for your business and the government pays you back for it.
Oh, and who pays for it?
Nobody. You write it off.
Who writes it off?
I don't know. The write-off people. What? Why are we having this conversation?
So if I need booze to get through my day, I can just write that off?
That's a stretch.
But the skincare products you got this morning, those are a write-off.
What skincare products? You purchased skincare products?
Okay. I am the face of the company. If I have acne, what does that say about the legitimacy of the store?
That's not a write-off. That's not a write-off. This? Not a write-off.
Oh, well, the bedding's non-refundable, so...
David, a write-off is a business expense used to reduce your taxable income.
Okay, well then, why isn't it called a tax write-off?
It is!
Because I'm telling you
that's what I
right
would
now.
do.
Yeah, that's not how it works.
I also love, you guys know me. I am ambitious, so I love having mentors. I love being like, what is my plan to learn and grow? I'm a goal setter, so I'm always like, this is the next title. This is my next salary, like goal.
Right.
You know, like I know climbing the corporate ladder kind of puts a bad taste in people's mouth, but for some people like me, it's extremely motivating and fulfilling as you do kind of grow, you know, in a company. And I feel like working for yourself, you definitely are challenged and continuously learning and evolving. It's just in a different way.
Yeah.
And it can be hard to find mentors. Like in my jobs, my boss often becomes my mentor, or at least, you know, some sort of leader on my team becomes a mentor to me, and I can learn a lot from them. Where when you're working on your own, you have to like scope those out, you know, and there's of course networking events and friends, and, you know, you can find those mentors. It's just not as intuitive as it is in a corporate setting.
Yeah, there's a huge part of working in a company that's like socially based.
Yeah.
And when it's just you by yourself, you're literally missing out on all of the social parts of that. And even if your company does not have a great culture, just having people that you work with that you can chat with and say like, hey, what'd you do this weekend?
Yeah.
Like it can make a big difference if you're a social person.
Yeah. And on the coworker piece, like having somebody who you can rant to, they know every single person you're talking about. Like that is something, even if you rant to like your best friend about work, she still doesn't know these people you're ranting about like the same way a coworker does. So like if it is just like, yeah, hey, how's your weekend? And like the small chat, or if it's like somebody who fully understands like everything you're ranting about work wise, like that is so good.
Yes.
So therapeutic.
Yeah.
And often, like for me, a lot of my friends that I've made in my adult life have come from work.
Yeah.
So I think, like, I always say that I don't really go to work to make friends. Like, that's never why I accept a job. I'm not like, oh, everybody here is young and cool, I'm going to make so many friends. I'm like, I'm here to do my job. But inevitably, since I spend so much time with these people and like trust them with my deepest, darkest thoughts about all, you know, all the like things going on in corporate life, of course they turn into friends. And that's definitely something, that's harder to come by.
Yeah.
In a freelancer, your own setting.
Yeah. The last thing is how like consistent the work is. Most times it's stable and secure. Whereas I'm going to talk about money again, so sorry if money's triggering to you. But when you're freelancing, you have to accept that there are going to be months where you're going to make less, and you have to be able to save your money to pay your living expenses for that month.
Yeah.
And so maybe in January you make $10,000, and that's the most you've ever made, but then you get to February and you've made $300. You still have to be able to support yourself, and that can be really hard. Whereas if you're like, I get paid every 2 weeks, it's the same amount. It's so much easier to budget, to know how to live within your means.
And it's also just kind of like a financial stress taken off your shoulders. So you're never like, am I going to be able to afford rent this month? Like,
one less thing to think about.
Yeah, definitely. And I think regardless of what your actual job is, like there's going to be like busy seasons and then quiet seasons. You know, if you're a wedding photographer and like you do this freelance, like you're probably busting ass like all through the summer and fall, winter, and maybe like early spring. Those are the months you're like, hopefully I made enough from my busy period to get me through the slow time. So it is definitely a lot more stable if you just have that every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Shows up in your bank account. You don't even really think about it, you know?
Yeah. So now that we've just like shit all over freelancing, I feel like we need to defend it a little bit.
Yeah, very true.
Because it's not that we are anti-freelancing.
Mm-hmm.
We're just trying to give it like, I don't know what the right word is. Like,
I think
we're trying to be truthful and not glamorize it.
exactly. And yeah.
Yeah. But there are obviously good parts of freelancing or owning your own business, or else
Why would
no
people
one would do it.
Yeah. And it is still like a goal for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And like the end goal, like I said, for me, I've done freelancing and I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't know, but I'm still like, maybe in the future, like,
Yeah.
I feel like it is still a goal of mine to like own my own business. And a big part of that, like the reason behind that is because I just want to be my own boss.
Yeah.
Like I'm somebody who I just feel like I always have the best idea. I feel like a lot of people are that way, you know, where you're like, it's my way or the highway, or like, of course I know. And you just wait for you to say something at your corporate job and they don't listen, and you just wait till you can be like, told you so.
Right.
Like, told you this months ago. That's me in the corporate world. So of course, being my own boss where I make the rules, I set the values. Maybe one day I'll get to the point where I'm deciding who to hire or the clients we're working with or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's obviously a huge draw for a lot of people, myself included.
Yeah. And you get to decide who you're working with as far as clients.
Yeah.
Like the amount of times where it's like your job sucks because you're working with an unresponsive client, or it's just boring. Like you say, for me, I went to film school, and then it's like you're stuck for 3 months doing a B2B corporate video for a client that you've never heard of before, where you're like, if this was my own business, I would have said no to this and then only said yes to the glamorous things.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously,
100%.
like when you just work for someone else, you can't be like, no, I don't feel like working on that today.
Yeah.
Whereas when it's fully up to you, you can.
Yeah.
Another major thing, which is the number one draw for me to freelancing, is you can make a lot more money. Like if you think of it as every time your company's being paid, that's being split by the accountants and your boss.
All those teams we talked about.
Your HR. Whereas when it's just you by yourself, all the money's going to you.
It's all you.
Yeah. Which, like, for a lot of freelancers, you can make money, say, in 6 months to then take off the next 6 months and take a vacation. That's how lucrative it can be if you are of the right mindset, the person who can budget, the person who can hustle. And you can be very successful.
Yeah. And if you can see your value, like, I think that's a big thing. And I feel that comes with time. Like, I only freelanced for a little while before like taking a break, and I'm still taking a break. But like if you're just starting out, like I think it is easy to lowball it and not know your worth and whatever. But once you get that experience, and you set your own rates, like absolutely you can make a lot more money.
This is like a random tip that I'm just going to throw out there.
Do it.
But if you are freelancing, or if you have a side hustle and you find that you're too busy, that means you have to raise your rate.
Yeah.
So many people don't know this. Like I have people in my life who complain about how busy they are, or they're having to turn down clients because they don't have time. I'm like, that means you have to up your rate.
Yeah.
Because you will find a client who will pay it, and you'll be doing less work for more money.
Yeah. I feel there's a lot of like master classes about that and stuff.
Okay,
Like a lot of, I think it's very much like knowing your worth.
Yeah.
Because even like the type of content or type of work you're doing.
Yeah.
That's one thing to me. Like I didn't even really realize how valuable like social media strategy is compared to like social media management and like community management. Right. So it's like, of course you're going to like learn as you do these things, but it's like, know your worth, like know what you're contributing, and charge for that 100%.
Another pro is obviously that you get to set your own hours. If you're not a person who's successful working 9 to 5, maybe you'd rather work like 9 p.m. till 5 a.m.
Yeah.
Like when you're freelance, it literally doesn't matter.
You can do the work when it works for you.
And you can work as much or as little as you want. If you want to be like raking in as much money as possible, you could be working like insane amounts of hours. Or if you're like, I want to make enough money to sustain my lifestyle at X amount, you could work like 15 hours a week and be happy.
Totally. Yeah, that was the biggest thing that I liked about freelancing was I do my best work literally after 7 p.m.
Yeah.
So, of course, like that's when I was doing my freelance work and I was like, man, I'm getting so many good ideas. But like for my day job, I'm like, well, I was up at 9. Like, I'm not going to keep working at this at 9 p.m.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's just like, yeah, people work at different times and corporate like companies are often a lot less flexible with the hours. Like they maybe range from like 8 to 4, but not for us late night workers. Like we struggle, man.
Yeah. Another pro to freelancing is that you don't have to work with coworkers. If that is something that's like the bane of your existence at work, this is like the ultimate position for you because you don't have to deal with people slowing you down. You don't have to deal with collaboration that you don't enjoy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also like if you are like outsourcing or like hiring employees or something like that, like you choose who you work with. That's the one other thing where, you know, we talked about how it can be isolating, but also if you do start working with other people, like how great is it that you choose who you work with, not your boss hired somebody who's the opposite zodiac sign that you don't get along with. Like that's my experience. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I love that. I also think going back to how you wear many different hats, that is also a draw for me because it's way more dynamic. And I think, you know, my parents are both self-employed. And that's the one thing my dad always says is like, I'm doing something different every single day. I can't imagine logging in, sitting at a computer, doing the same thing every single day.
Right.
And it's so true. Like, yes, it is overwhelming to be the marketing and sales team, to, you know, do your actual job as a graphic designer or video editor, whatever you do, be the account person, whatever.
Yeah.
But it keeps things interesting. And I feel like if you're someone who like runs off adrenaline or like needs things to be like dynamic, you can definitely thrive by wearing so many different hats.
Yeah. So I feel like the main thing as far as like the 9-to-5 or the freelance is if you know your worth, think you have a good product, or like if you're someone who would be hired, you are the product in this scenario. But if you think you have a good product, a good idea, and it's something that you're passionate about, something that you're happy to think about 24/7, then freelancing is the way to go. But if you're someone who's working for a paycheck, it is so much easier to work for someone else.
Yeah, 100%.
And there's no shame in the getting the paycheck game.
Yeah. And I feel like that's what TikTok is going on about these days. It's just there's more to life than work. So why are we glamorizing like the grind, you know, and like working 24/7? Like I've been seeing so much of like, I think this was a sound a few weeks ago where it was like, I didn't want to work a 9-to-5. So I started my own business and now I work 24/7. Like that's literally can be the experience for some people.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I also, like, I've already hinted at this a bunch or like said it a bunch, but I do want to also just say that it's totally okay if your dream is to freelance like mine was, or to own your own business, and then you start doing it and then you don't end up liking it. And I just want to like say this because when I was going through that, I was like, what the heck? Like, I'm a total failure. Like, why isn't this what I thought? Like, it must be me. But I feel like you don't know what you don't know. So in this case, like I made the dream to own my own business without ever having experience owning my own business. So how am I supposed to know that's actually the dream? You know what I mean? It's not until I start actually doing it that I'm like, yes, this is what I thought it was, or yes, this is fulfilling. Yes, this is what I like to do. I can't come to those conclusions just by like imagining what it would be. You know what I mean?
Of course. And I also feel like if you're working a 9-to-5 and considering freelancing, start with it as a side hustle.
Yeah.
Be like, I'm going to work Sundays.
Yeah.
And
That's
see how it goes. And then don't just quit your job. because if you end up hating it, it's going to be really awkward.
Yeah.
So start as a side hustle. And if you do love it, like maybe you could even negotiate with your company that you work at and say, I only want to work 4 days a week so that I could spend 3 days doing my side hustle, or whatever it is, or build up a clientele so that when you do quit your 9 to 5, you're not like, okay, now I have to spend 6 months building my business where I'm not going to get paid. You like,
you
for
have
a lot
taste
of,
and you're like prepared to make that jump.
Yeah. These like career decisions, especially when they're financial, shouldn't be just based off of like, well, I got in a fight with my boss today, so I'm quitting tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like,
as tempting as that is.
Yeah. We've all been there. But yeah, it's just you have to realize how much work it is. Whereas if you're passionate, it doesn't feel like work.
Exactly.
But if you're doing it because you hate your boss and you think it'll make you rich, I'm not sure if that will fuel you through answering emails on the sunniest day of your Hawaiian vacation.
Yeah, 100%. I also think this is a realization I've come to recently, like in the last 2 years or so, while I was freelancing, but also while I was working for the last company I was at. And I think if you're kind of romanticizing this idea of freelancing, owning your own business, being an entrepreneur, asking yourself why, you know? So of course getting that experience helps, but it's just like, why do I want that? And is it because I'm seeing people working from a beach on Instagram? Is it because this is what everybody's doing? This is what everyone's dream is? And for me, this is where like the light bulb happened for me was I wanted to own my own business, so things were done my way. Going back to that whole like business control freak that I am, or boss control freak that I am. But I also was like, there's just so like corporate world sucks. Like it's change is slow. So it's like, if you want to actually make a change in the world, I'm just going to start my own company that like gives back. It's environmentally conscious. It is, you know, good in terms of like diversity and like the people we show in our ads, the people we hire, all of these things. Like, it's like, I'm in control of that. So of course I can create change that way. But one thing, and maybe I'm just going on a rant, but this is the only episode I've had been able to voice this realization. But one thing that I realized at my last job was you don't need to work on your own in order to like leave your mark on the world or to like create change. And in fact, if you work for a large company, you can often make way more change from the inside of a large company than you can as your own like small business. So a really good example of that is like environmental impact. So at one of my last jobs, we were having this debate between removing our paper bags and going to plastic bags because it would be cheaper. And my boss was like, what the hell? That's going backwards. Like there's laws in Canada. This was a few years ago, but she was like, there's laws in Canada coming that are like banning plastic bags. This is so bad for the environment. Like, but the company's like, no, we are going to save money if we do this. So she literally put together a whole like deck on it being like, these are the laws that are coming, these are the provinces plastic is banned, this is the environmental impact, like no. And she ended up like preventing us from going back to plastic and sticking with recyclable paper bags. And it's just like, for like a company that has like hundreds of stores across Canada, you know, that's a huge impact. And same thing, I work in marketing, I work in social media, so it's like all of these like cultural moments and like shifts that are happening within consumer mindset and stuff. It's like, I'm the one who's deciding who like we're hiring for photo shoots or whatever. Not so much anymore, but at one point that was my job. So I can make sure it's like representing everybody and, you know, these sorts of things. So this is my long-winded speech to say, if your why is to own your own business to create change, you might be able to create more change by working corporate. It can be harder, obviously, but it can also be way more rewarding and like way more impactful.
Yeah.
That was kind of, a whole sidebar, I guess, but something I'm extremely passionate about because I feel like people don't really think of that.
Yeah, there are so many reasons for wanting to maybe try out the freelancing, like we said before, maybe start it as a side hustle. But I think the way to know if you're ready to fully quit your 9 to 5 is if your side hustle is successful. Like I said, you have 9 to 12 months worth of rent, food money, money for getting your nails done, whatever, saved. And this is something that, like we said, you're truly passionate about and you're ready to work 24/7 to get it done.
At least in the short term, you know, obviously the goal is not to work 24/7 forever, but it's like, yes, have your expenses like figured out so you can make this leap.
Yeah.
Having like a few less stressors on your mind and just focus on figuring it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so much to think about.
Yeah. And so it is, I don't know, maybe this is like the key thing to journal about. Or it's even like as simple as a pro and cons list like we did today. And maybe your pros and cons for your 9 to 5 look totally different than what we mentioned.
Totally.
But it's really comes down to your passions and how you work. If you're an organized person who's like, I have no problem budgeting, I love that. Then maybe freelancing is for you. But if you are like, I just want to be creative, I'm telling you right now, it's going to be really hard. Unless you get into, I was going to say unless you get into like a film union or something. But you still have to do like your own taxes or you make enough to pay someone to do that. But yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I hope we gave everyone something to think about, especially like the 20s. Your 20s are so early in your career.
Yes.
Like this is the time to experiment.
Yes. I love
out.
that. Move companies. Yeah. Take on that side hustle just to see what it's like.
Yeah.
Experiment with passions outside of like your day-to-day corporate job as like freelancing services. Like, yeah, I think that's such a good point.
Like you never know. I was telling one of my coworkers about this. I started video editing, which is my job, if you don't know. I started that just because my boyfriend needed someone to edit his short films. And so I learned on YouTube and now it's my career. And it's like anyone could do that with anything. Like if social media is your passion, take a course on it and start a side hustle. If you want to be a photographer, start taking people's pictures, you know, like it sounds stupid how simple it is, but it really can be that simple.
Yeah, 100%. And that's like liberating. You know?
Yeah. So if you have a passion like that, go for
Chase it.
If your passion is spending your weekends hanging out like me, not worrying about work, don't chase it.
Drinking wine every night.
Logging off if you say have a podcast that you work on, there's no shame in the 9 to 5. Well, I think that's where we're going to leave it for this week. So thank you so much for listening. You can find us on social media. We're at Our Golden 20s. The platform we're the most vocal on, I guess, is Instagram, but we are on TikTok, we're on Spotify, we're on Pinterest. We also have a Patreon page, which is where we put the episodes early. And it's your best way to show your support for the podcast. So if you like this episode, make sure you become a Patreon. If not, you can rate us or follow us on social. We appreciate it all. And that's it. Thanks for listening.
See you next Tuesday.